June 4th, 2008, Mesa, Arizona, 5:29 p.m. A camera captures the last moments of a man's life. Travis Alexander, a 30-year-old motivational speaker and legal insurance salesman, was brutally murdered in his own shower, shot in the head, stabbed 27 times, and his throat slashed from ear to ear. The killer? Someone he trusted, someone he loved, someone who claimed she wasn't even there. 5 days. That's how long Travis Alexander's body lay undiscovered in his Mesa home while his friends grew increasingly worried. They were supposed to leave for Cancun together. Instead, they found him in a pool of blood. A single bloody palm print at the scene. Hair follicles. A deleted digital camera containing photos that would shock the nation. Evidence that would unravel one of the most twisted love stories ever told in an American courtroom. Travis Alexander was living the American dream. Mormon faith, successful career, a man who pulled himself from poverty to inspire thousands. He believed in redemption, in second chances, in the power of love to change people. That belief would cost him everything. Jodi and Arias, aspiring photographer, waitress from California. They dated for just 5 months, but their toxic relationship would continue long after it officially ended in June 2007. Friends had been warning Travis for months. "I started seeing things that were just disturbing," one friend would later testify. "I say, Travis, I'm afraid we're gonna find you chopped up in her freezer." They had no idea how prophetic those words would become. The last photo taken on Travis Alexander's camera shows him alive in the shower at 5:29 p.m. 62 seconds later, the camera captured something else. Something that would expose a level of rage, jealousy, and obsession that defies comprehension. Jodi Arias would eventually be convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. But not before she told lie after lie after lie. Not before she claimed self-defense. Not before she turned a murder trial into a media circus that captivated the entire nation. Tonight, we examine the evidence, the lies, the manipulation, the obsession that turned love into murder. Because the truth about what happened in that bathroom in Mesa, Arizona is more disturbing than fiction. This is the story of Travis Alexander and the woman who claimed to love him right until the moment she killed him. June 28, 1994. A summer day in Ontario when Linda and Robert Carlson welcomed their daughter Melinda into the world. She was their middle child, sandwiched between older sister Christina and younger brother David in a household filled with laughter and love. Friends remember Melinda as the girl who lit up every room she entered. Her laugh was infectious, her kindness boundless. Even as a child, she was always the one comforting others, always the peacemaker when her siblings fought. She was the type of person who remembered everyone's birthday, her childhood friend Sarah would later recall. She'd show up at your door with homemade cookies and a card she'd decorated herself. That was just Melinda. By age 16, Melinda had found her calling. She would spend hours perfecting hairstyles on anyone willing to sit still long enough. Her bedroom mirror was surrounded by photos of elaborate updos and elegant cuts, her inspiration board for the future she was building. After graduating from the Ontario College of Hair and Aesthetics in 2014, Melinda's talent quickly gained recognition. Clients didn't just come for her technical skill. They came for the way she made them feel. Beautiful, valued, heard. But Melinda's greatest dream wasn't professional success. She wanted what her parents had, a loving marriage, children of her own, a house filled with the same warmth and security she'd known growing up. "I want to be the kind of mother my mom was to me," she wrote in her journal at age 21. "I want to create a safe place where my children know they're loved unconditionally." Her brother David would later say that Melinda trusted too easily. "She saw the good in everyone," he remembered. "Even when the rest of us had our doubts about someone, Melinda would defend them. She believed people could change." At 24, Melinda Carlson had built a successful career, earned the love and respect of everyone who knew her, and maintained the kind of optimistic outlook that drew people to her like a magnet. She believed in second chances, in redemption, in the transformative power of love. Those beliefs, the very qualities that made Melinda Carlson so beloved by everyone who knew her, would soon put her directly in the path of someone who would exploit her trust, manipulate her compassion, and ultimately destroy everything she held dear. Love, the very thing she longed for most, the very thing that would lead her into the hands of danger. 24-year-old Agar Mohsen Hassan, Hamilton, Ontario, a name that would soon become synonymous with one of the most brutal crimes in Kitchener's history. But to understand what happened to Melinda Vasilia, you have to understand the man who killed her. And that story begins thousands of miles away, in a country torn apart by genocide. Agar Hassan's parents fled the Kurdish genocide in Iraq when he was just a child. They came to Canada seeking safety, seeking a new beginning. What they found was survival, but not peace. Even in Canada, the trauma followed them home. Young Agar witnessed domestic violence between his parents, violence that would leave scars on his psyche that never fully healed. Friends who knew him in high school described a withdrawn young man, quiet, intense, someone who seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. But it wasn't just his childhood trauma that shaped Agar Hassan. As a teenager, he experienced a sexual assault that further damaged his ability to form healthy relationships. He never received proper counseling, never learned to process what had happened to him. The losses continued to mount. Close friends became victims of violence, one lost in the 2014 Ottawa shooting, another to suicide. Each tragedy adding another layer to his untreated post-traumatic stress disorder. By his early 20s, Agar Hassan had developed a pattern in relationships that those close to him found deeply troubling. He was possessive, controlling, desperate for attention and affection, but unable to give the same in return. Voice intensifies when Agar Hassan loved someone. He didn't just want them, he needed to possess them completely. Former girlfriends would later describe relationships that felt suffocating, relationships where his need for control became frightening. One ex-girlfriend obtained a peace bond against him. Another simply disappeared from his life, changing her phone number and moving without telling him where. For someone carrying so much unprocessed trauma, so much unresolved pain, the idea of love had become twisted into something else entirely. Love meant ownership. Caring meant surveillance. Protection meant control. And then he met Melinda Vasilia. For someone drowning in darkness, Melinda's light seemed like salvation. Her kindness, her patience, her unwavering belief that people could change. To Agar Hassan, these weren't just attractive qualities. They were a lifeline he would grip so tightly, he would eventually strangle the very thing he claimed to love. But his need for control would soon become something far more dangerous than either of them could have imagined. April 2016. Spring in Kitchener, Ontario. Two young people meet at a mutual friend's gathering. Melinda Vasilia, 23, radiant with her dreams of building her hairstyling career. Agar Hassan, 24, still carrying his wounds, but hopeful that maybe this time, love could heal what had been broken. The attraction was immediate. Melinda saw something in Agar that others might have missed. Vulnerability beneath the intensity. Pain that perhaps love could soothe. For Agar, Melinda represented everything he had been searching for. Warmth, acceptance, the family connection he had never truly experienced. Those first few months were electric. Agar would drive the hour from Hamilton to Kitchener multiple times a week just to see her. They talked for hours about their futures, their dreams. Melinda introduced him to her family, and they welcomed him with open arms. Melinda's brother David would later remember how happy his sister seemed in those early days. She was glowing, constantly talking about her new boyfriend, making plans for their future together. She saw in Agar someone who understood struggle, someone who had overcome adversity. But by summer 2016, Melinda's closest friends started noticing changes. Small things at first. The way Agar would tense up when other men talked to her. How he needed to know where she was at all times. The constant text messages throughout the day, every day. He was always there, one friend would later tell police. Not just physically, but digitally. If Melinda didn't respond to his texts within minutes, he would send more and more, until she answered. What Melinda saw as devotion, others recognized as something else entirely. Agar's need for constant reassurance became exhausting. His jealousy, initially flattering, grew possessive. His love felt less like affection and more like ownership. The arguments started small. Why did you talk to that customer for so long? Why didn't you answer my call immediately? Why? Melinda found herself constantly explaining, constantly apologizing for things that shouldn't have required apologies. Her world was slowly shrinking. Nights out with friends became rare. Phone calls from family became rushed conversations interrupted by Ager's calls. By fall 2016, the relationship had become an emotional roller coaster. Explosive arguments followed by passionate reconciliations. Accusations followed by desperate apologies. Breakup threats followed by promises to change. Text messages between them during this period would later be read in court. They revealed a pattern that experts recognize as classic emotional abuse. Ager's messages were manipulative, controlling, obsessed, and extremely jealous. He monitored her every movement, questioned her every interaction. When Melinda tried to set boundaries, Ager would threaten to harm himself. When she attempted to spend time with others, he would accuse her of betraying their love. When she showed any independence, he would withdraw his affection until she returned to him, desperate to restore the peace. Friends who had initially been happy for Melinda began expressing concern. Her family noticed she seemed anxious, on edge. The bright, confident young woman who had always been the peacemaker in her family was now walking on eggshells in her own relationship. By winter 2016, what had started as a love story had transformed into something much darker. Ager Hassan wasn't just in love with Melinda Vasilia. He was consumed by her. Every aspect of her life had to revolve around him. Every moment she wasn't with him was a moment that filled him with rage and suspicion. Melinda began confiding in her closest friends about the relationship. She was scared, she admitted, not necessarily of physical violence, but of the emotional prison she found herself in. She felt like she was losing herself, becoming someone she didn't recognize. By December 2016, the honeymoon was definitely over. What remained wasn't love, it was obsession. What had started as romantic devotion had become psychological captivity. And Melinda Vasilia was beginning to realize that the man she thought she could save was actually the man she needed to escape from. But Ager Hassan had no intention of letting her go, ever. The stage was set for a confrontation that would end with one of them never walking away. February 14, 2017, Valentine's Day. While couples across Ontario were celebrating love, Melinda Vasilia made one of the hardest decisions of her life. She ended her relationship with Ager Hassan. But like everything else in their toxic dynamic, even the breakup wouldn't last. Within hours, Hassan was bombarding her with messages, apologies, promises, threats to hurt himself if she didn't take him back. The emotional manipulation that had defined their relationship reached a fever pitch, and it worked. By the end of Valentine's Day, Melinda had agreed to try again. Friends and family watched in dismay as she fell back into the same destructive pattern, the same controlling behavior, the same emotional prison. But this reconciliation would last just 6 weeks. By late March 2017, Melinda had finally found the strength to end things permanently. The constant surveillance, the jealousy, the suffocating control, she couldn't live like that anymore. April 3rd, 2017. Melinda sent Ager Hassan a final message. Clear, unambiguous. The relationship was over. No more chances. No more manipulation. She was done. Hassan's response was immediate and terrifying. He drove the hour from Hamilton to Kitchener without invitation, without permission. When Melinda refused to let him in, he found another way, breaking into her backyard, forcing his way toward her apartment. Melinda fled, terrified, calling for help. Neighbors rushed to intervene as Hassan became increasingly aggressive, increasingly desperate to reach her. The police were called. Ager Hassan was arrested and charged with break and enter with intent and 2 counts of assault after he fought with the men who tried to protect Melinda. The courts took swift action. Hassan was banned from all contact with Melinda Vasilia, banned from entering Waterloo region entirely. The message was clear: stay away from this woman. Respect her decision. Leave her alone. But Agar Hassan had never been good at accepting rejection. Over the next 3 weeks, he sent more than 60 text messages to Melinda. Most went unanswered. Those that were answered were brief, cold, Melinda trying to maintain distance while not antagonizing him further. Friends noticed Melinda seemed constantly on edge. She would check her phone obsessively, not for messages she wanted to receive, but for messages she feared were coming. She started looking over her shoulder when she left work. She double-checked that her apartment door was locked. The woman who had always felt safe in her own life, in her own city, in her own home, was now living in fear. The man she had tried to love, tried to help, tried to save, had become the person she most needed protection from. But Agar Hassan wasn't done. The court order meant nothing to him. The assault charges meant nothing to him. Melinda's clear rejection meant nothing to him. The law told him to stay away. The courts demanded he respect her boundaries. Her words had made it crystal clear that their relationship was over. But Agar Hassan had other plans. And on April 28, 2017, those plans would destroy everything. What happened in Melinda's apartment that Friday morning would shock even seasoned homicide investigators. Because when obsession reaches its breaking point, when control becomes rage, the results are more horrifying than anyone could imagine. April 27, 2017, 11:47 p.m. Melinda Vasilia receives her final text message from Agar Hassan. 3 weeks after the court ordered him to stay away from her. 3 weeks after he was banned from entering Waterloo region. The message was simple: I'm outside. 64 messages. That's how many times Agar Hassan had contacted Melinda since the court told him to leave her alone. Most went unanswered. The few responses she sent were clear, direct, desperate: leave me alone. It's over. Don't contact me again. But Hassan had driven the hour from Hamilton to Kitchener anyway. He was standing outside her Country Hill Drive apartment building, violating his court order, risking arrest, risking everything for one more chance to talk to her. What happened next would be debated in court for years. Hassan claimed Melinda invited him up. Text evidence suggests otherwise. What's certain is that somehow, despite every legal barrier designed to protect her, Agar Hassan made it inside Melinda's apartment. 11:55 p.m. Security cameras capture Hassan entering the building. Melinda's neighbors would later report hearing voices from her apartment, calm at first, then increasingly heated. 12:30 a.m., April 28th. The conversation continued. What started as Hassan begging for reconciliation quickly devolved into accusations. Why wouldn't she give him another chance? How could she throw away what they had? Didn't she understand how much she meant to him? But Melinda Vasilia had found her strength. After months of manipulation, after being isolated from friends, after living in fear, she stood her ground. The relationship was over. She wanted him to leave. She wanted him out of her life, permanently. For Agar Hassan, this wasn't just rejection, it was abandonment. The woman he believed belonged to him, the woman he thought he could control, was asserting her independence, was choosing herself over him. 1 a.m. Neighbors reported the voices becoming louder, more aggressive. One resident considered calling police, but hesitated, thinking it was just another argument between young couples. What happened in the next 15 minutes would shatter multiple families forever. 1:15 a.m. Silence fell over apartment 3B on Country Hill Drive. A silence that would last until 3 a.m. when police arrived to find Melinda Vasilia dead in her own home. The autopsy would reveal the true horror of those final minutes. 47 stab wounds, 27 to her neck alone, 6 to her chest, multiple defensive wounds on her arms where she desperately tried to protect herself. 2 knives. Hassan had brought 2 different knives to that apartment. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was methodical, calculated, brutal beyond comprehension. And when it was over, when the young woman who had tried to show him love lay dead on her apartment floor, Agar Hassan didn't call for help. He didn't stay to face what he had done. He didn't show even a moment of remorse. Instead, he cleaned himself up, gathered his belongings, and walked out of that apartment as casually as he had entered. By morning, he would be across the border, beginning a 2-month flight from justice that would captivate the nation. But his escape was just the beginning of a digital confession that would shock even hardened investigators. Because Agar Hassan wasn't done talking, and what he would reveal about that night would be more disturbing than anyone imagined. 5:45 a.m., April 28, 2017. While Melinda Vasilia's body lay undiscovered in her Kitchener apartment, Agar Hassan was already crossing the Peace Bridge into Buffalo, New York. For hours after committing murder, he was a fugitive fleeing toward the Mexican border. By 10 a.m., security cameras captured him at a Walmart parking lot in Erie County, Pennsylvania. But this wasn't a man in panic. This wasn't someone overcome with guilt or remorse. Hassan was methodical, calculating his next move. He stole license plates from another vehicle and attached them to his own car, a calculated move to avoid detection. Then he disappeared onto the interstate highway system, heading south toward a border that promised freedom from Canadian justice. But Agar Hassan couldn't stay silent. Despite being wanted for murder, despite every instinct that should have told him to remain hidden, he began posting online. And what he shared would shock the world. May 5th, 2017, a Reddit post appeared that would captivate the internet. The author claimed to be Agar Hassan himself, admitting to killing his girlfriend, but spinning an elaborate tale of self-defense. I hit her with it, almost blindly. A few times. I didn't know what happened. I was confused, shocked and scared, the post read. But the physical evidence told a different story. 47 stab wounds isn't self-defense. It's rage. It's overkill. It's murder. The post continued with stunning arrogance. I understand the early judgments made by society. Distancing myself makes it seem like I am trying to escape a crime. I'm not. I'm only trying to give myself some space and fully take in what happened before I turn myself in. Space. He wanted space. While Melinda's family was planning her funeral, while investigators were processing the most brutal crime scene many had ever witnessed, her killer was asking for understanding, for patience, for time to process what he had done. The Reddit confession went viral. Thousands of users debated whether it was real, whether anyone could be so brazen as to confess to murder on social media while actively fleeing from police. But Hassan wasn't finished with his digital performance. Instagram posts began appearing, photos from his journey south, captions that revealed a mind completely disconnected from the reality of what he had done. First came arrogance, posts suggesting he was misunderstood, that the world would eventually see his side of the story. Then fake remorse. Carefully crafted messages designed to generate sympathy while avoiding any real admission of guilt. And then, the most chilling post of all, I'm coming home. Not to face justice, not to take responsibility, but to surrender on his own terms, in his own time, when he decided he was ready. The media frenzy was immediate and overwhelming. News outlets across North America picked up the story of the murder suspect confessing on Reddit, posting on Instagram, treating his flight from justice like a social media campaign. While investigators worked tirelessly to track his movements, while Melinda's family grieved in private, Agar Hassan was conducting a public relations battle from hiding, trying to control the narrative even as he ran from the consequences of his actions. For 2 months, he stayed one step ahead of international law enforcement. For 2 months, he played cat and mouse with authorities while maintaining his online presence, his digital confession, his desperate attempt to rewrite history. But you can't outrun the truth forever. And the truth about what happened in Melinda Vasilia's apartment was about to catch up with him in the most unexpected place. July 11th, 2017. San Antonio, Texas. 2:30 p.m. A routine traffic stop by U.S. Secret Service agents suddenly becomes international news. The man behind the wheel isn't just wanted for murder in Canada. He's been operating a counterfeit currency scheme across multiple states. Agar Hassan had been on the run for 74 days. 74 days of social media posts, digital confessions, and calculated manipulation of public opinion. But his arrogance had finally caught up with him in the most unexpected way. The Secret Service wasn't looking for a murder suspect that afternoon. They were investigating counterfeit money circulation in Texas. But when they ran Hassan's name through the system, alerts from Canada immediately flagged him as wanted for homicide. Inside his vehicle, agents discovered evidence of an extensive counterfeiting operation. fake bills, equipment used to manufacture currency, a criminal enterprise he had been running while posting online about being misunderstood, about needing space to process his grief. The man who had claimed self-defense, who had portrayed himself as a victim of circumstances, had been committing federal crimes across the United States while evading justice for murder. The Reddit confession that painted him as confused and traumatized was revealed as just another manipulation. Within hours of his arrest, Waterloo Regional Police were working with U.S. Marshals to begin the extradition process. But Hassan wasn't going to make this easy. He fought the extradition every step of the way, using legal delays and procedural challenges to stay in American custody as long as possible. For months, Melinda's family waited. They watched as the man who had brutally murdered their daughter used the legal system to avoid facing justice. They endured his continued social media presence, his ongoing attempts to control the narrative from his Texas jail cell. January 2018. After 6 months of legal battles, Agar Hassan was finally extradited to Canada. He arrived at Pearson International Airport in shackles, no longer the confident fugitive posting on Instagram, but a murder suspect facing the full weight of Canadian justice. But even then, justice would be delayed. Hassan was denied bail and held in custody, but the legal system moved slowly. Pre-trial motions, discovery disputes, psychiatric evaluations. The wheels of justice turned, but they turned at an agonizing pace for a family desperate for closure. And then came March 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic shut down courts across Canada. The trial that should have taken place in 2019 was postponed indefinitely. Months turned into years as the justice system struggled to function under unprecedented restrictions. April 2023. Nearly 6 years after Melinda Vasilia was murdered in her Kitchener apartment, the trial of Agar Hassan finally began. 6 years of waiting, 6 years of delays, 6 years during which her family lived with the knowledge that her killer was alive while she was gone forever. But when that trial finally started, when all the evidence was presented, when the jury heard the true scope of Hassan's violence, his lies, his manipulation, the verdict would be swift and definitive. Justice delayed is not justice denied. And the truth about what happened on Country Hill Drive was about to be revealed in all its horrifying detail. April 3rd, 2023, Kitchener Superior Court. 6 years after Melinda Vasilia was stabbed to death in her apartment, 12 jurors would finally hear the truth about what happened that night. And the defense's opening statement would shock everyone in that courtroom. Agar Hassan's lawyer stood before the jury with an audacious claim: self-defense. According to the defense, Melinda Vasilia had grabbed a knife first. Hassan had only defended himself when she allegedly attacked him in her own apartment. But the prosecution had evidence. 6 years of investigation, forensic analysis, digital records that painted a completely different picture of that final confrontation. The medical examiner's testimony was devastating. 47 stab wounds, 27 to her neck alone. The angle of the wounds, the depth, the sheer number. This wasn't self-defense. This was a sustained, brutal attack on a woman who fought desperately for her life. Defensive wounds covered Melinda's arms and hands. The forensic evidence was clear. She had tried to protect herself, tried to ward off the attack, tried to survive. But Hassan had used not one knife, but 2 different weapons to kill her. The prosecution presented hundreds of text messages between Hassan and Vasilia, messages that revealed the true nature of their relationship. His obsession, his jealousy, his inability to accept that she no longer wanted to be with him. For weeks, the jury heard testimony from friends who described Hassan's controlling behavior, from family members who watched Melinda change from confident to fearful, from investigators who processed one of the most brutal crime scenes in Waterloo region history. The defense tried everything. They claimed Hassan suffered from PTSD. They pointed to his refugee background, his childhood trauma, his mental health struggles. But none of that could explain away 47 stab wounds. None of that could justify what he had done to Melinda. When Hassan himself took the stand, his testimony fell apart under cross-examination. His story changed. His timeline shifted. The confident fugitive who had posted on social media became a stammering defendant who couldn't explain the forensic evidence. May 24th, 2023. After days of deliberation, the jury reached their verdict. The courtroom was packed with Melinda's family, friends, and supporters. 6 years of waiting, 6 years of grief, 6 years of hoping for justice. Guilty of second-degree murder. The conviction carried an automatic life sentence. But the question remained, when would Agar Hassan be eligible for parole? The judge had the discretion to set that timeline anywhere between 10 and 25 years. September 27, 2023. Justice Jerry Taylor delivered his decision. 16 years. Agar Hassan would not be eligible for parole until 2033. 16 years to reflect on what he had done. 16 years for Melinda's family to know he remained behind bars. But even a life sentence couldn't bring back the 23-year-old woman whose only crime was trying to love someone who couldn't love her back. Couldn't bring back the daughter, sister, and friend whose light had been extinguished by the very person she had tried to help. The trial was over. Justice had been served. But the questions that haunted everyone who followed this case remained unanswered. How do you recognize when love becomes obsession? When devotion becomes danger? When the person you're trying to save becomes the person you need to escape from? September 6, 2023. The sentencing hearing. 13 victim impact statements were submitted to the court. 7 read aloud. Through tears and broken voices, the people who loved Melinda Vasilia finally had their chance to tell the world what her murder had cost them. Anna Todorovic, Melinda's mother, spoke directly to the court about her daughter. "My heart, my soul, my best friend," she said through sobs. "The day she died, I was destroyed. A part of me is gone with her." Friends described a young woman whose life had barely begun. A daughter who called her mother every day. A sister who always remembered birthdays and anniversaries. A friend who would drop everything to help someone in need. But perhaps the most chilling revelation came during the sentencing hearing itself. The prosecution revealed that Agar Hassan had messaged Melinda's mother using a fake Facebook account, telling her it was partially your fault that Melinda had died, and callously adding, "Oh well, you have other daughters." Even from jail, even after conviction, Agar Hassan continued to torment the family of the woman he had murdered. The manipulation, the cruelty, the complete absence of genuine remorse. It never stopped. This case forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about love, obsession, and the warning signs we choose to ignore. Melinda Vasilia tried to save someone who couldn't be saved. She extended compassion to someone who interpreted kindness as weakness. In the end, obsession masquerading as love destroyed multiple lives. Not just Melinda's, but her family's, her friends, everyone who loved her and now must live with the knowledge that her death could have been prevented. The jury found Agar Hassan guilty of second-degree murder, rejecting his claims of self-defense. But questions remain that may never be fully answered. Did Agar Hassan snap in a moment of uncontrolled rage when Melinda refused to take him back? Or was this always his plan the moment she tried to leave? A calculated act of violence against a woman whose only crime was choosing her own freedom over his need for control? Only he knows the truth. And in 16 years, when he becomes eligible for parole, that truth may determine whether he ever walks free again. Melinda Vasilia was 23 years old when she died. She had dreams of building a family, of making people feel beautiful, of spreading the same kindness that had defined her short life. Those dreams died with her on April 28, 2017. But her story, this story, serves as a warning. Love should never feel like captivity. Devotion should never become obsession. And when someone shows you who they really are through their actions, believe them the first time. What do you think? Was Agar Hassan's claim of self-defense credible, or was this premeditated murder disguised as passion? The evidence speaks for itself, but the questions about how we recognize dangerous obsession before it turns deadly remain as relevant today as they were in 2017. If this story has shown you anything, let it be this. Your safety matters more than someone else's feelings. Your freedom matters more than their need for control. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is walk away, no matter how much they claim they need you. His case was heartbreaking from start to finish. What do you think? Was this a tragic moment of rage? Or was it a cold, calculated act? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I read every single one. If you found this video chilling, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps more people discover these stories. Make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next deep dive into a case just as shocking as this one. And if you know someone who follows true crime, share this video with them. It means the world to me and helps keep the channel growing.